I'm going to see if we can a little bit here. You are seeing our PowerPoint and then also seeing me on the right with an incorrect there. Again, I'm Julie Eklund from the coordinating board, and Doug Bond is going to be joining us in a minute. Okay, we are all set then?
Okay, and I think my photo now appears there, and let me, something terrible hasn't happened to Julie, that's my picture. I'm going to talk about, let's see, next slide, please.
Oh, slide. No, backwards.
I'm not seeing that. Okay, there we go. Okay, I'm going to be talking about the, as Julie said, about the plans under HB 2550. Okay. HB 2550 consolidates a couple higher education enrollment assistance programs that already existed. The most recent legislature, the 83rd legislature, here on your slide, Texas Education Code that it applies to. Today we have a text of the bill. We just have one page of that bill, and that's the part that refers to the higher ed assistance programs. The bulk of the bill concerns and loan repayment. Let's consolidate two programs that were already in existence: the Higher Education Enrollment Assistance Program and Assistance Plan. Of those plans and of HB 2550 is to increase college going at high schools that have lower than average college enrollment rates. Part of that requires the coordinating board to identify those. Part of that bill is that it transfers responsibility for the high schools from the coordinator to you all, to the institutions. Here, 2550, there's, first of all, carryover from the two previous plans. As I mentioned before, it consolidates those plans. The closest proximity to a high school is to provide and assistance to the high schools on admissions, financial aid, and so forth. And then there's legislation in the bill. It has emphasis on African American males and Hispanics. It requires to work with the school to provide access to dual credit. It directs institutions to report plans and plan results to the court each year. I'll read that bullet because you all directly report plans and plan results to the court board each year. And it sounds ominous. I like the plan that we have for you to report those things. And it calls for the coordinating board to summarize the plans in the annual Closing the Gaps progress report. So our coordinating board fall into three major areas. Number one, identify those high schools. And in coordinating board already identifies a lot of low performance schools known as HB 400, and it has been doing that for of those schools have at least 26 graduates per year. They're in the lowest 10% of high school to college going rates, and coming for 2 consecutive years. There's more details about characteristics, but that's, you get the idea. The list includes about 100 to 150 high schools each year. And so the coordinating board is going to provide a list of all high schools with 26 or more graduates, stored by percent of graduates who in higher ed, and sorted then. So at the top of that list, you're going to see those with the lowest percentage at the end with the highest. And this is for comparison purposes, and all institutions HB 400 high school have to partner with a performing school or schools in their area. This area of responsibilities is to summarize the plan results for high schools and using data already collected through TEA and CBM reports. Earlier that for the institutions is to report results of the plans. We're already doing that with your TEA and CBM reports. So there's not going to be an extra burden there for you. And those metrics that we would compare with the data that's already collected, and these would be shown in the report each year. Enrollment rates overall and down in various ways, such as students and African American male students with, say, four-year institutions. Another, the number of applications to the universities, and overseas when the Applied Texas data are available with appropriate accounts. Participants in dual credit courses, and remember one of the elements of the bill, HB 2550, is to increase credit enrollment. So what high school students get to do, fall to spring and fall to fall, number of applications. The abilities are to obtain details of the HB 2550 plan annually from you, the institutions. And and I like this, we're going to collect that information with an online survey institutions. This proposal is provided in your handouts today, and I'm going to do a demo of that survey. Sending the presidents and the CTC liaisons the link to the survey and instructions by March. Presented this proposal for meeting the HB requirements to groups previously. A group of university known as CPUPSI, and that was back in September, and CTC liaisons, which is back in October, and we have incorporated their feedback in this proposal. And I will move on with a demo of the survey that we're going to bring up.
Just to provide you all access to the internet.
In a moment, if you'll wait, and I'll do.
While they are working on pulling up that survey, I'm going to make a couple of comments related to the presentation.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that Julie is going to add some more to pull some things in. Yeah,
well, I did want to mention that this approach of having a survey, having institutions complete a survey about related to a plan is very similar to the approach that we use with the Developmental Education Plan Survey, known as the DEP survey. Many of you at institutions should be familiar with that. It's an approach where we collect information about a plan through a survey so that we can get responses in a consistent format so that we're able to aggregate and tabulate information about what schools are providing to us in an efficient way. And some of you are probably familiar with the old URRS plans, and I just wanted to point out that this is a very different approach than what was taken with the URRS. We think it's going to be a very efficient and effective way for us to get information from institutions, I think very straightforward. So we're going to show you the survey. It's a survey that has activities included so that institutions let us know what activities are happening. And it looks like we're working access here. The survey has come up now, and you should all be seeing it in a moment. But you'll see there's lists of activities on the survey and options for adding additional activities. And if we see several activities showing up that we haven't already listed, we'll go ahead and use them. Doug said something earlier about the information we'll be getting for the metrics will be through TEA and CBM reports. From the TA reports, we get information about the high school graduates. So we'll be able to use TEA graduate information to find out who those students are and some demographics about the students from the low-performing high schools. And, of course, we will use our CBM reports and the data that you report to us to track those students, to go ahead and track those students into higher education. We'll be able to see what dual credit courses they're taking, of course, because we get reporting right now from all of you about dual credit on the CBM OOS, and we will be able to, of course, persistence from fall to spring and fall to fall, and even over time look at graduation rates for those students. So we have a wealth of information that we already collect. We want to rely on that for the results that we are required to report in the progress report, as well as rely on the survey for collecting information. So we're getting very close now to getting into the Qualtrics survey. If we're not able to access it this way, we'll go ahead and use the Word version. Oh. Wonderful. Patience, this is new technology for us. It's technology for us to have.
Can I just see it's got a check mark.
Yeah. Seeing space. Access here, and in a moment, hopefully, we will be able to access the new survey. Another, looks like we're here. Okay, wonderful. Okay, then I'll get back to Doug to walk you through the survey. I think with the mouse not working too well with our technology. Okay, so now how to, Victor, you can put us on the document now. If you select that Word document. And
we do have a Word version of this. Unfortunately, it won't.
Yeah.
Seeing that, right?
It works in practice, but we're going to go ahead and show the Word version, which was in your handouts, and I think you'll be good.
So, everyone. So this is a Word version, which doesn't have the formatting of the survey, as you'll see it. The survey begins with background description of invitation of it and so forth, purpose of the survey. And if you look down below that introductory paragraph, this survey has a checklist of activities that will enable your institution to meet 550 reporting requirements. And a deadline of April 1st to submit the responses. With question 2, a screening question. Has your institution collaborated with one or more low-performing high school required an HB 2550? Anytime in this frame of the academic year 2012 to 13 or the fall 2013 semester. You may be HB 2550. Boy, that was passed. Well, if you've been with high schools under an assistance plan, then we want information on this. Will be serving kind of like as a baseline. Annual surveys will have. Then it continued on to question 3. We asked to list the high schools, school or schools, with name and the TEA code. The TEA code is a 9-digit code with which in that time period, FY or year 2012-13 or 2013 semester, and we'll be providing a local names and the TEA codes. This real web. You would move right on into question 4. This is the heart of the survey. Clear activities that plan for providing assistance to high schools, and report only in that for the time frame. And for these are in alphabetical order. The first one is bridge programs or other academic college readiness programs, and the next so forth, college fairs. And then at the bottom, there's a place where when you select, there will be a text box where you can enter other things if they're not on the list. The next optional one, if you want to provide additional information that you're not able to provide, you want to click things, tell us more, space for that. By the way, in those text boxes, they're not contained by the size of the box. You can just keep typing if you want. That is the end of the survey, except we need to know your email address and your phone number, institution name and code. You may be for a system, or you may be reporting for a particular, and either one is okay, whichever works for you and whichever is appropriate for you assist. Pretty easy, wasn't it? Finally, is to your survey, the button that says submit, and you're done. And finally, thank you for completing this year's survey in advance, for completing your survey 2550 plans.
Okay. Okay. I'm in the committee. Hi. I'm getting on the laptop here. We're going to go ahead and just talk very briefly about the list of schools, and then we'll go ahead and open it up to questions through the chat. And if that doesn't work, we'll open up on the phone line. We plan to provide a list of HB 400 schools, and that is the coordinating board's proposal to you. This is the way it's used for years. Many of you are already working with these schools, so it made them sense to us to continue using those 400 schools as they are defined. If you would provide feedback about that through this process, we'd be happy to hear if you agree with that. We're required by the statute to choose the schools that are significantly lower than average in terms of the graduates going on to higher education. I've also mentioned something in the PowerPoint that I want to give a little bit of clarification on, and a graphic I want to show you. And that has to do with the list that we're going to provide to you that shows for all of the high schools in the state that have at least 25 graduates, put them in order of the percent that go on to higher education. I think it's wonderful for comparison purposes. I also think that it's going to be important for, and it looks like we just lost our it's also going to be important for us in terms of allowing institutions that don't have HB 400 schools in the area to see if there are schools that are very low producing. Maybe they're not in the bottom 10%, but they're in the bottom 15% or 12%. Maybe those are schools that would be moving to the bottom 10% over time. It allows you to see for schools that you've worked with that might have moved out of that bottom percent, where they stand, if they're making progress. So we thought that would be a very helpful thing for all of you to have on the website. But I want to show you something that we did. We did a little bit of mapping with the current list of HB 400 schools. We created two documents. I want to share them with you, and we'll be able to post these. But this particular map shows the HB 400 schools that don't have an IHE, and these are our main addresses. So it's not going to include satellite campuses and those types of things. But we want to see are there schools that don't have an institution of higher education right there in the same county? And the high schools here are the red dots, and the 4 institutions are blue, and the 2-year are green. And some high schools that don't appear to have a main campus around them. We wanted to produce just to see very many, and there really aren't too many on this list. Any of them are in the county right next door, or they're a high school that actually is in the same county, but we mapped this by the county where the ISD is located. We actually had some situations where there's a little bit of overlap based on how the mapping works. So we're really just looking at those dots that seem far away. Not too many, and we are aware of satellite campuses and other programs. So we wanted to do that, but more importantly, we also wanted to share a map that where we have IHEs, where there really aren't any HB 400 schools right there in the area. This map shows all of the HB 400 schools as red dots, not just those that aren't near as higher ed institutions, but it only shows higher ed institutions, HB 400 school right there in the county with them. So these are the institutions that may want to look at that additional list that we're going to create and see if there are high schools in their area that they're not working with that really are low performing in terms of the percent and number of graduates going on to higher education. So I want to with you the second list. It's optional for institutions to work with those schools. At least that's what we're proposing. But we think it's important that institutions are aware of the low-performing high schools near them and are making an effort to work with those schools and be in touch with those ISDs. So I didn't. Now we're going to go ahead and take questions. I'm going to go ahead to chat here, and if we have any questions about the HB 25C presentation, we'd be happy to address some of them now, and then just to make sure we have enough time for the second presentation, we'll just do this for about 5 minutes, and then we can move forward. Okay, about people actually see this. I see where can I find the list of low-performing high schools? Once it is determined that we are going to use the HB 400 schools, which is what the coordinating board is now proposing, we will go and post that on a special place on the Texas Higher Data website. We're going to create a page. It will have the information that we had for the handouts today, but it'll also have the list of HB 400 schools. It'll update every year for all of you, and it will have an additional list of all the high schools with over 25 graduates that I was just discussing.
For the web link that's in the survey.
Yes. Well, in the survey, there's one web link that I think we left in. It's just the sample survey, the Word document, and that's the link to the Closing the Gap progress report. We will be reporting results every year from this data that will be tabulated. So from the plan surveys that you're sending to us. The second, I believe I didn't include in terms of where to find those HB 400 schools. We had just a placeholder there. I'm not even sure it's still in the handout. So do that for the HB 400 list. We will put something in the latest news on the website saying, hey, now the HB 2050 website is ready. The HB 400 schools list is available there. We may call it the list of low-performing schools. I know HB 400 was from a we've used that terminology linked to the statute, to the legislation, because you're also familiar with it. But we'll post that list. Well, those will be broken down by ethnicity. We will be providing information about high school to college enrollment by ethnicity, as long as there aren't FERPA restraints for low-income high schools. That's part of the requirement. Part of the bill does emphasize enrollment of African males, and Hispanic students, and part of that is because in our work with data related to closing the gap, we have an understanding that those are groups that we feel are very important for enrollment. They're below our average in terms of enrollment in higher education. So we'll absolutely be showing by race and ethnicity for those in terms of the students enrolling in higher education. And that overall, in the makeup of the schools, the TEA website is an excellent place for finding information about high schools. It's very easy to do through TA to add that type of information. But we will show breakdowns whenever possible. Schools be encouraged to participate? That's an excellent question, and it's one that we have not discussed at length, and so thank you. We will go ahead and put together a question for you and post it on the web. We certainly would hope that they be encouraged to do so. I do want to emphasize that part of this bill really does take the responsibility for working with these schools coordinating board and give it to the institutions of higher education. You know, our requirement is that we collect this information about the plan and collect this data about how those students are performing results. Is in my understanding of it in terms of the legislative intent. It is that it is up to institutions to do these schools, to contacting these schools, to be encouraging these schools to participate. Now, if there's something that the coordinating board could do that would be helpful, we'd be certainly happy to take suggestions. And if we discuss it and decide to do more, we'll provide that information. Schools missing on this, then these are low performing schools just that we had on our list, and they're only the schools that met the qualifications. Again, this map is just an example of the types of things we've been doing and can do to try to understand the low performing schools. We found some challenges with it. This is using our new GIS mapping software. So thank you for pointing that out. This map here is not intended to show all the IHEs. It's just intended to show the IHEs that an area where we didn't find the 400 schools. The other map I believe it mapped all of the IHEs, but it only shows those high schools. So let me go ahead and open other map, and you'll go ahead and see that some of those other schools may be popping up. Just a way for us to try to get some comparisons. And do a map that has all the high schools that are in the HB 400 list and all the IHEs. But this is now just to have something to provide to get some of the things that we're looking at. We basically did it to see, hey, it's pretty much we have a low performing school based on using this list, and we saw that when we saw the case, we said, you know, we think it's helpful to produce an additional list so that institutions that don't have low performing schools on this list can look and see other schools that are performing, you know, significantly lower than average, even if it's not in the bottom 10%. Okay. Low performing schools in and service area. Again, the bill gives responsibility to the institutions for working with the schools. We know there might be some challenges in terms of the language about proximity. Where in terms of the role of the coordinating board, how much is up to us in terms of making determinations? Our sense is that it's up to the IHEs and that we don't want to necessarily dictate this is exactly how you should interpret the term proximity. We know in situations where there are 4-year institutions and 2-year institutions in this place that may both very close to a local high school. So I think, you know, communication is going to be very important in terms of this bill, in terms of talking to other schools in the area. If there are several schools who they're working with, you know, look at the list, maybe contact them and say, are you working with another higher ed institution now? Is that partnership working for you? Again, it's left up to the institutions to determine which schools are in the closest proximity and to connect with them. Actually, this part seems to be working pretty well for us in terms of taking questions over the phone. And I think we're getting the camera worked out here. Okay. Well, now we're going to move on to the next presentation. And if you do think of questions related to HB 2550 as we move forward, please be sure to provide the chat at the end of the webinar, or to send them to Jenna there. We've provided that information, and we'll be sure to get answers. I think it will be handy to have a place for both of these topics on our data website to post the information, so it should be easy. Next, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to switch to the next PowerPoint. The next is guidelines for first college level courses. I do want to begin, and I hope it was clear, that it's a completely separate topic from what we were discussing related to the HB 2550 schools. So the other is because we would be very similar, wanting to hear about these proposed that we have, and we wanted to be full of your time. So that's why we decided to combine these two topics. They're not related, and we are now going to. I'm going to hand it over to Jenna Cosert, who's the program director in planning accountability, who works with the developmental education data and programs. I think here's okay.
I'm ready to present these guidelines. It's been a long process for us, and it's involved input from many different people. All right, so what we're going to do today, I'm going to give a little bit of background information on these lines, talk about how they were developed, and then present the highlights of the guidelines for questions and answers. Courses, part of the accountability measures for developmental education. And in these accountability measures, we look at 3 critical skill areas: reading, writing, and math. And 2 of the measures compare first-time college students who are college-ready at the point that they enter with not college-ready and need developmental education. So the first of these measures is the first college level course in the skill area, and we compare students who are college ready and give them 1 year to complete the course. For students not college ready and who need depth, we give them 3 years. Are within 2 years, and that's for students only who are not college ready, and then 1 year persistence rate for both groups. Data. So it's an accountability measure. College and universities report data to us. And reverse college level course in each of the 3 areas, and currently institutions have discretion in what courses will count. With respect to guidelines, in the past, the coordinating board did publish a list of allowable first college level courses, and that was back during the TASC era. Institutions are even now still using that same list. The coordinating board does not publish guidelines. And just to get a sense of what institutions are actually reporting, this is from what reporting manuals, and what institutions are actually given. Students have to pass an A, B, or C for it to count as a college level course. Well, these guys are frequently requested by institutions. People come in that are new to the system. What counts as a first college level course? I think guidelines create a better shared understanding. Test points also at community colleges have create this need for guidelines. guidelines, our first task was the creation of a stakeholder group. Ask institutions to we selected from every institution who did send nomination. So we have a very large group of over 70 and 39 institutions represented at the stakeholder meeting. Was to develop these guidelines collaboratively, and you can see here we had a great diversity of representation. So we had all institution types represented. We had developmental education faculty, as well as academic course faculty. We had administrators, and we had a range of disciplines. All contribute to the development of these guidelines. Of the guidelines. So we met the first meeting with the August 7th, 2013, and following the meeting, we synthesized input and developed a first set of draft guidelines, which we sent back to the group. And we included that feedback, feedback. Then we developed a final proposed guidelines, and that's what you're going to see today. They were included on the presentation site, so you can see the full set of guidelines. And through, we will distribute and post website. Okay. So go over and talk about what the guidelines are in each of the. And I'll do the reading and writing, and then Julie will come back and talk about the math. Things I want to mention before we actually look at the guidelines. One of the things that the stakeholders were very was not adding for institutions. So that was a concern, and in the guidelines, I think that you will see here don't require a great burden in terms of work. They clarify what we mean by these first college level courses. College level text in English as an essential aspect of the course design. And so the criteria that the stakeholders focus are listed there. They're drawn from the Texas College Career Readiness Standards. You can locate textual information. I'm not going to read all of them. You can. But these criteria, what establishes a first college level course in reading. General guidelines that the course may be semester credit hours, and then have a TSI requirement in reading. And the student, for the course, they need to have met TSI in reading or enrolled concurrently in a developmental education course or intervention. And a list of courses. And we have courses that, as long as they meet those general requirements, the 3 semester hours and the TSI requirement, they will always count. And always count because the holders found that these, in the outcomes, the course criteria were met. And so those are government, psychology, sociology, and philosophy courses listed there. And count if they meet the course criteria. General requirements are the English 1301 and 1302. Literature courses, art, music, and theater history courses. And the reason, like English 1301 and 1302, institutions require more reading in these courses than others. We did find there was some diversity, and that's why an institution will need to look and see, well, the courses include reading for it to count. And the courses that are not recommended, course in art, music, or theater other than those identified above, foreign language courses, and learning frameworks courses. And I want to talk a little bit about the learning frameworks. And this will apply both to the reading and the writing. We received mixed input on whether learning frameworks courses should count as either courses in reading or writing. And we said that we do a study. That actually not many institutions are reporting learning frameworks courses as first college level courses in either reading or writing. Is in the grade, in the course outcomes and the grade distribution. So it makes the sense as a measure. But one thing that as institutions are experimenting with introducing learning frameworks courses, first courses performance center might be a useful thing for institutions to use to help measure effectiveness of these learning frameworks courses. So we are not recommending that they be used. And the next, if an institution does wish to use a course that's not on our course list, they must look and make sure that that course meets the guidelines and the course criteria, and just keep some documentation justifying use of that course. So institutions are restricted to only those courses on the list. Okay. Now, writing, and the similar, but what with the writing is that for most students, the first course in should be English 1301 or 1302. And when we looked at what institutions report, for community colleges, 93.8%, almost 94% of students' first college level course is English 1301 or 1302. And for universities, it's 80.9%. So in practice, what institutions are reporting. But this is where other courses may make sense. So the course criteria was that at least 30% of the course grade must be based on student writing. Input we received from stakeholders in the groups really looked at a lot of alternatives. This is the way I felt made the most sense. And as for the reading, there are 3 credit hours with a requirement in writing. Will always count, again, English 1301 or 1302. Courses count if they meet the course criteria or requirements, or history courses. And courses are not recommended creative writing, foreign courses, frameworks courses. And I think if an institution wishes to use a course that's not on the list, but meets the course criteria, they just need to maintain the documentation. I'm going to get over to Julie to talk about the math.
I had the opportunity to work with the group that came together to put together the guidelines for the first couple courses. The slide that you're seeing now, we basically developed background because it's as we talk through this to sort of understand that there are 2 very distinct groups of students that we're talking about when we think about reporting first college level courses for math. And this group are students for math is a requirement for their degree. So that, of course, is going to include students who are doing a bachelor's degree and also students who are pursuing an academic associate's degree and students pursuing some types of certificates or applied associate's degrees where math is required. Degrees award, which TSI is a requirement. Students are expected to meet the requirement in math, but math requirement, college level math is not a requirement for earning the degree. It might be a possibility as a distribution requirement, but it is not required to be taken. And for those students, normally to meet SAC's education requirements. There's, 15 hours students are to take an academic math or a natural science course as part of their program. See, as we talk about the guidelines, how we have addressed that in terms of reporting first college level courses. I'm going to talk about two different groups here in terms of the guidelines, and this background slide will help delineate those two different groups. The first group, again, those students who are required to take a math course as part of their degree, and the second group are those students who, although TSI is a requirement that they meet TSI because they're in a level 2 certificate program or pursuing an associate's degree, although that's a requirement, an academic math course is not required as part of the program. Okay, next slide. Let's talk about the guidelines for math when a math course is required for a program. And we're very straightforward with the math and science faculty that we have gathered, and I think they're very that they are straightforward in terms of what is to be reported. First of all, course must have 3 semester credit hours. And TSI requirement in writing, I think we've got a typo there. We have a TSI requirement in math, and I apologize. We'll go ahead and fix that on the PowerPoint. So there's a TSI requirement, and if a course for which meeting TSI is not a requirement, then that is not going to be a course that is appropriate for a first level, for reporting the first college level course. And again, we'll go ahead and fix that typo. Recommended courses that are all courses listed in the academic course guide manual, or those equivalent lower level university courses that are listed under math. So all courses, the MA, TA rubric in the ACGM, or any lower level university course that is listed under math will be allowable and reportable according to the guidelines. That's what's recommended. And then statistics course, which would include the Psych 2317 in the ACGM and any university low division statistics courses. It could be your economic statistics course, your statistics for business, your statistics for economics. Included our university lower level quantitative analysis. Many of those we did do a review, but those the group decided would be allowable. And courses that are not recommended, or any courses that aren't listed above. So on the reading and writing for math, for those students who are required to take math, the recommended guidelines are very straightforward. If the students require math, then a math course should be reported as the first college level course in math. In terms of students who are not required for the program, it gets a little more complex, and we spent a little more time discussing the best approach for these students. But now through what we have in the final recommended guidelines. First, the course should be a 3 semester credit hour course, as with all the others in the guidelines. And any courses that are allowed is required for the degree or certificate. So if a student takes any course in the ACGM on math, that course, of course, would be allowable, even if they're not required to do this. That's the same thing for all of the other courses that we discussed previously. So that's allowed, but also allowable would be a math or a natural science course that fulfills the program requirements, those general education requirements that a student needs to take. Being for certain certificates and degrees that a student must PSI in math. We want to see, did that math preparation in high school through developmental education prepare the student to be successful in the math or science course that was required. And so if it's a math course, but the science course that a student chooses, then that science course may be reported as a first college level course for math. What we would prefer in terms of for reporting purposes is that if a student does choose to take a math course and a science course, that course be reported to us as the first college level course. If the course isn't taken, then the science course and a physical science course. If they do take a physical science course, such as chemistry and a biological science course, something in chemistry and something in biology, report the physical science course, the biological science course. But any of these are included in the guidelines for courses that are recommended reported math for the students where math is not a requirement for their degree. We have included 4 courses from the workforce course manual. There are 4 technical math courses. Had a lot of discussion about these courses with our 2 different meetings, and the 4 included here, I think, are the ones that there were agreement. And that it is not recommended that any other course, again, for guidelines, be included. So guidelines, again, differ from the reading and writing courses where an institution could choose a course and justify it based on whether it met requirements. For it's a little more prescriptive in terms of what's being recommended, and that's based on the work that was done with the group. I add that the PowerPoint hasn't not been posted. Go ahead and post it. We thought we had posted it as of yesterday evening, and it's not showing up on the website. The guidelines are available, and I think it's really important that you, the actual guidelines, read through them. Since the final meeting about these topics, and these are final proposals. If you do see anything in the language that's confusing or have any questions or concerns, working directly from those guidelines would be very helpful to us. Of course, we understand the PowerPoint has important background and other information, so we'll go ahead and post the PowerPoint unit today if we can get it. I'll make that one correction. So those are the recommendations for math. I think we'll turn it over at this point for questions and comments, and I'm fortunate to see them on this screen, so I'm going to have to head over to another screen we have going and those questions. We don't have any questions. I hope that's because this is very straightforward for all of you. It could be that you're trying to digest all of what we've presented. I do want to add that at the back of the guidelines, you will notice that we're going to include some information about success points. And actually, while you're thinking of questions, I just want to address that in more detail than Janet did. We now have funding, 10% of funding, approximately 10% based on success points, and completion of a first college level course is one of the areas where institutions can gain funding for success points. One is allowed for successful completion of a first college level math course, and point allowed for successful completion of a reading course, 0.5 points for successful completion of a writing course, and institution may report a reading college level course, a first course that covers reading and writing. If it meets all the requirements for both, it may be reported for a student, and if that's the case, then 1 point will be rewarded for that completion. Student can only one time per student. So several courses should not be reported for each student. There should only be one first college level course report for a student in terms of success points. And if students take the courses for dual, the points are still allowable. And that's a common question that we get. So although this webinar is not about success points, and we will be have in the past and will continue to present information about success points, I did want to mention that reasons I think institutions urged us to develop guidelines is because of the outcome-based funding based on success points that just started this year. I have a question, and Victor has kindly set it up for me so that I can see it right here on the screen in front of me. Okay, this question is, we have not allowed to count as a first college level math. Your PowerPoint said they are recommended, and the handout said they must count. Is that, or is it still not used? A very good opportunity for me to talk a little bit about the voluntary nature of these guidelines. Because institutions asked us to look at this, they thought it was important like to be more restrictive in terms of what they allow, that is acceptable. If an institution were to be less restrictive, that's acceptable. Now, come a point in time where, you know, interest, the guidelines become, so at this point, you can report what, you know, we feel is appropriate. The reason we have the guidelines is because institutions didn't know institutions were reporting what we report. There was a lot of confusion about that. So I'll just at this point say these guidelines are voluntary, and so you can be more restrictive if your institution chooses to do so. Okay. Level 2 certs, and this might be, and we were going to have someone from our program staff here. Our level 2 certs subjects to stack 15 hours of gen ed. If not, then we use a technical course with the highest level of dev math required. Okay, this gets a little complicated. It was my understanding in discussions about level 2 certificates that generally there is a limit for the 15 hours of dev ed, but I am not in the program, and there might be some cases where that's an exception. So we'll go ahead and get you an answer to that. But basically the guidelines in terms of recommended, technical courses that are listed are what are being recommended, not additional technical courses. So we'll get clarification. Again, in earlier discussions, it's my understanding that for its level 2 certificate, there is a gen ed requirement, and students need to take some kind of math or science. Earlier. So I missed some here. Will there be a prerequisite for TSI added to the courses that always count for a college level course and the ACGM? And Susan's going to join us. I don't know if we can email, but thank you. But we're going to see if we can get James Goman from our academic affairs area was going to join us. I think he might have been delayed in a prior meeting. In terms of the ACGM, I am not aware that TSI prerequisites are included in the ACGM. TSI prerequisites come from the TSI law and rules. It's not it's just that TSI is a requirement for college level academic coursework according to the TSI statute. We'll let him. I don't want to say for sure. We'll hopefully find James and he'll be able to answer that question for us. But has been proposed is that if a course does not have a student is not required to meet TSI requirements for a college level course, and we had some examples from institutions of a case where no, we don't require TSI for that course because we don't believe it falls under the academic course guidelines. Well, then it really would be inappropriate to report that course as a first college level course, because the point of these our accountability system that tracks first college level course completion is linked to TSI developmental education outcomes, and we want to see if students will enroll, if they need developmental education once that's completed, if they are able to move on and successfully complete a first college level course, but also see for those students who come in who've already met TSI, how did they do in terms of their successful completion of the TSI course. It helps us to understand the effectiveness of the TSI program and instruments if we are able through these methods to see how students perform when they get into a first college level course. And these are part of developmental education measures in the accountability system. Okay, James was able to come and join us, so I'm going to go ahead and relay that question to him and see if he's able to answer us. The question had to do with level 2 certificates. Are they all subject to the SAC 15-hour requirement of gen ed?
Certificates, yes, and it is that's pretty much a universal requirement for level 2 and the applied associate degree.
Okay, thank you.
15 hours.
And that was our understanding. Okay. Other HB, and we have, did I miss any earlier questions? I think
Yes.
not. Oh, okay, go ahead, Janice.
So one of them was, when will institutions begin using guidelines?
Okay, so we're going to allow, and in fact, there's something about a little bit earlier, and I think we've just lost our screen here. At least I'm still there. We're going to go ahead and allow institutions a couple of weeks to provide feedback to us. In fact, we were talking about a February 5th, which is a Monday, deadline for any feedback that you'd like to share from this webinar for both topic areas. Once we receive that, we will, of course, carefully review all of the comments that we receive, comments and questions, analyze the guidelines at that point, and hopefully we will be able to get them posted in March or early April. Again, some of that will depend on the comments. It could be that we'll get them up sooner, but certainly if we're able to do so, we'll go ahead and post these voluntary guidelines.
TSI requirement.
Okay. Question, what is the TSI requirement? Is that just overall, is it a very general question?
I believe so.
OSI is the Texas Success Initiative, and it's a statute. Under the Texas Success Initiative, students need to meet standards, and it's basically it's either through exemption on an instrument allowable, such as the ACT or the SAT or high school tests, high school required tests, so that they can meet the standards through exemption, or it's through the TSI assessment, which is now a test that Texas has that students to show if they're prepared to do college-level coursework in math, reading, and writing. So students who do not meet the TSI requirements, developmental education involved for that student. Sometimes it's a situation where the student is doing paired courses, paired level courses with some kind of support, but students need to meet the TSI requirement. That information is reported to us generally before they move into college level courses, and it's part of some kind of a planned program. And there are extensive rules on the Coordinating Board website about TSI. We've had some changes related to TSI and determination that students are TSI ready. It's a little more flexible than it's past in some ways in terms of a holistic review, but in terms of testing, there is, again, just one assessment in Texas for determining TSI readiness to do college level coursework, as well as several exemptions. Yeah. I hope that's helpful. And if anyone has additional question or clarification, I don't want to spend too much time on basic background, but I'm, again, more than happy to talk to anyone about background material. Actually, echoing that the Coordinating Board, I'll give you my number. It's 512-427-613. We're going to have comments. Go to the slide. If we could have the slide up with Jana's contact information, because she is the official person that we want you to contact. Comments about the proposals that we brought forth today. Okay, the 2550 questions you all had time to think about a little bit. In regard to HB 2550, many institutions are implementing a college readiness course. One suggested would allow high school students to become TSI complete upon successful completion of the course. What does the THB stand on this? I'm going to say that there is language in HB 5 related to college prep courses, and I'm not going to say more about that. I know the Coordinating Board will be, and Susan, Susan Brown is going to something there.
Yes, just those prep courses, the way those are listed in statute, they can meet TSI standards for an institution that works with the ISD. It's very explicit that it does not necessarily mean that they meet TSI standards everywhere. That's a discussion that we are having internally with TEA. So there will be information on that, but we have not had all those discussions.
In 550, it looks, okay, this is actually the same question. Okay, we've got it twice. It's important. And then and then we're going to move on. Here's, again, a question about guidelines. Are the recommended courses for reading and writing also suggested to be used for TSI exemptions based on coursework? No. These are, again, tied to what is reported to the board related to developmental education metrics in the accountability system as we track students' progress from developmental education through first college level courses. This is not related to that.
There's HB 2550.
Okay.
Question.
Let's see if we can. Glad to see you all very engaged in the topic today. Okay. Tell me the first thing so I can find it.
Might have been that same one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. What does this requirement mean? Does this being college ready? To do academic college level coursework, I think, is the language in the issue, and you're welcome to look at rules and to look at the statute. It's the student. I think it's under student success in the education code. Oh, thank you. We had apology for the redundant submission of questions. Actually, very important questions that we're happy for you. Do we have any other questions or comments or concerns? Okay. Well, I think what we will do just briefly, in case folks are having trouble using the function on the webinar, we're going to go ahead and take the mute off of the phone. So if there is anyone out there with comments or something, a question they want to ask, they can do it through the conference line. So a moment to do that, since we do have some extra time. On your screen is Jana's information. If you want to go ahead and contact her with any questions you have about the proposals, any comments or suggestions related to the proposals, we will be finalizing them in the next few weeks and then posting the final version. Again, as I hope this is sort of the end of our process in terms of putting these together. We have presented this information to groups. We've worked with the stakeholder group in terms of putting together the first college level course guide. So that is the work of that group. Okay. Oh, do them all individually? Oh, okay. So we're getting close to unmuting. And if to questions, so we should be able to hear you. Can someone give us a shout out if they're still on the line? Good. So we can hear you out there now. So if anyone does have any additional questions, now would be the time to jump in.
The question when you went to get James in regards to the TSI prerequisites being listed in the ACGM course descriptions.
Thank you very much for reminding me of that. Yes, one of the reasons we were for you, James, is there was a question about are there TI requirements actually in the ACGM? Is that something that's mentioned in the ACGM?
No, we do not list TSI requirements. All of the courses in the ACGM, with the exception of the developmental courses listed at the end, special of their own, all the other courses are college level. TSI could and probably should apply to just about any of them. Oh, yes. But we don't. So we do not specifically list TSI requirements in the ACGM.
I'm just checking my email.
And we're actually hearing some of you in the background, so because we did mute everything, so just so if we had additional questions, people would be able to ask them. Do you have any other questions?
Jerry?
Yes.
I was interested in back a few slides back. I can't scroll to get the slide exactly, but when they said that no learning framework classes would be would satisfy the reading and writing type requirements, and sort of, the THECB denotes different levels of learning framework. One is college, one is more developmental level. Are you talking about both levels?
Okay, Paul, there is a student success course that's a developmental education course. That is a college level course, and I believe that's what you're referring to. We do not call that learning framework here. We call that student success. And, of course, that's a developmental course. The Learn Frameworks course, and that's going to be your EDUC, I think it's 1,300, 1,200, 1,100, and your site 1,300, 1,200, and 1,100. The Learning Frameworks course is a college-level course, and we had strong discussion around this course in both the first group that we had with the stakeholder group as well as with the webinar that we did. So what we decided after that is we would do a little bit of a study. So we discovered that I think only about 2 institutions in the state were actually reporting learning frameworks up through now as the first college-level course. We don't have a strong precedent for institutions reporting that course, which is, that's one thing we wanted to look at. We also looked at some of the grade distributions. We talked a lot about the fact that those learning frameworks courses often are structured to help students prepare to be successful in academic level courses. So for us to be using that as a measure of were students successful when they got into the meat of their freshman coursework, it didn't necessarily resonate. And that was an argument that was raised in the meeting. So after a lot of discussion and after looking at the data, because if we had a situation where every institution in the state was reporting that as a first college level course, I think that would have been something to consider as part of the deliberations. But we did spend some time looking at the data, thinking about the course, talking, folks on the committees, talking to leadership, and the recommendation was made that not be included. I think Janet's point that some institutions want to look and see, and it's something we may very well want to look and see at the coordinating board as we track data. We might want to look and see, hey, for students who took that type of course, were they successful based on our first college level course? So we thought there were several reasons for looking at that way, but again, these are still proposed guidelines, and we are happy to get response from institutions regarding the guidelines. Again, they're voluntary guidelines that institutions asked us to develop, and I think for wanting to have an understanding of what other people are probably doing and to have some equity, but again, it's a proposal.
Julie, in regards to the Learning Frameworks course, didn't you also say that these are also just recommendations? These are guidelines that if a college wants to include that, then we can document that as being a first level course, because I think that those colleges that are truly offering the course as a Learning Frameworks level course would to substantiate the fact that students are being successful. Although it taught learning, the requirement is that it be a college level course. The students be college ready to enroll in that course.
We understand that, and that's why it was a topic that we spent a lot of time talking about and discussing. Because there are a lot of different points that can be made on both sides. This way we look at data. But you are correct. These are voluntary guidelines, and documentation, even in guidelines, the fact of keeping documentation, that's voluntary. Though before there were guidelines, I always recommended to institutions that, hey, it's just a good way to keep documentation for why you're making the choices you're taking for reporting purposes. But again, it is voluntary in terms of the guidelines, and these are recommendations, not requirements.
Do you all plan to ever gather more data on that from schools or require more? We collect a lot of data. We're seeing some good success.
Well, we absolutely, if you're seeing good success, it's interesting to think about tracking students, through those courses and into some of the academic, courses that fall into different subject areas. But we will absolutely look at, not only data on what we're seeing reported for first college level courses, and we shared a lot of that data with the advisory, they're not an advisory group, but stakeholder group. We shared a lot of that data. If you want to find the person on your campus that was involved in the stakeholder group, they could share data with you. We basically looked at what was being reported around the state as first college level courses. So all of that information is out there, or if you can't find, we'd be happy to supply it to you if you'd like to see it. So we continue, to look at that, and of course, it's part of our accountability system to go ahead and track those first college level courses. I'm looking at the at phone here. I should be looking at you. I'm talking at where your voice is coming from. But this is new to all of us, too. But, we'll always, every year, be tracking successful completion of first college level courses and tracking those students as they move through in higher ed, those that did that and those that required that and those that didn't. So, of course, that would be there. But a lot of time looking at other types of student movement through the pipeline, which is now possible because we collect student and course level data. Without the CBM-OOS, for those reporting officials who are participating, and I know there are some based on some of the questions we're getting out there, but for the reporting officials who are participating, this is one instance where we use the CBM-OOS and other data to really help inform the work of the stakeholder group and, help to answer some questions not only about those learning frameworks courses, but in general about first college level courses. So it has been tremendous for us to have that data, and we thank all of you who have had extra effort to collect data and report to us. And we're open to suggestions if there's certain types of reporting, certain types of reports that you're interested in looking at, maybe statewide having us look at. We're always open to suggestions for what we can do. And on the actual page that we're developing for first college level courses, we will go ahead and, if we do, as we do run reports, we'll provide that information. Okay, we had another question come in through the chat, so I'm going to address that next. The students need to be TSI complete in all three areas to take a college level course. No, they don't, and that traditionally has been the policy. A student can have met TSI in reading and writing and go on and take, English 1301 and English 1302 and history and all of that, but not be allowed to go on and take college algebra. Vice versa, a student could meet the TSI standard and be good to go for a college level math course. Now, of course, our rules say that a student, if they met the standard, they need to be allowed into those entry-level courses. An institution can have additional standards. But basically, yes, the student could go to math courses, but if they haven't met TSI in reading, then they be, unless it was under special circumstances under our TSI rules, they wouldn't be moving into the college level in writing. And you who work with developmental education, I think you've been participating in all of the webinars that our P16 group has been related to the new TSI statute, some of the new TSI rules for how to determine if a student has met TSI and is ready for college level coursework, because it is being looked at more holistically. We have seen movement towards and encouraged movement towards courses for certain students, especially those who are close to meeting the standards. Why in these guidelines we were very careful, when you look at the actual guidelines, we were very careful to say if a course has a requirement that the student has to meet TSI to enroll, it can be allowable, but that doesn't mean that you might not have some students in that course who are there, even haven't met TSI because they're there because it's part of a paired course. So in an instance where you have a course where you basically say, nobody has to meet TSI to get into this course. I don't even want to give examples because I don't want to suggest there are certain courses where people don't have to meet TSI, but maybe foreign language, which isn't one that is allowable under these guidelines, but maybe something like that. If your institution said, no, you don't have to meet TSI, and again, that's another whole discussion. If that was what was said, then the guidelines say that course does not meet the recommended requirements, because this is about tracking students who need to meet TSI for enrollment. Does that hopefully make some sense? again, we will provide the PowerPoint because I think it provides that. And this general webinar is for folks who have a range of background in terms of their understanding of the. So it's a bit of a challenge. So I hope we've provided the basics, but also given understanding. Okay. Any other questions? Either coming through the.
You might say
no. Yeah, it looks like we've got about 3 minutes left.
You're allowed to do that.
Okay. Well, our timing was planning was in terms of the amount of time that we would need to present this information. Thank you all very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. As we move to this new technology using webinars, I think generally it works pretty well, even though we had some information. And again, please send questions or comments to Dana there if you have any regarding efforts, and we will go ahead and make sure information is distributed right via final
On that. Your problem.
Maybe it's a school phone. Okay. How to make this phone work?
I just came from the World Community Club. Last year the guys are coming back. We'll talk here on campus.
Oh, the group who went to
No, the group that is advocating for and that helps the people that get out. So I want to say
May 1st, okay.
well, no, it's May 1st is this event that is on the back of it.
So what is this event? Are they coming?
Idea of the date, but John, the geography professor, is the one who brought them here.
Okay. Weren't they here like on Saturday or something?
No.
Oh, maybe that's why I come to.
But anyway, I thought you would be interested in knowing